All right. Hello and welcome to the Grit Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast. This is your host, Bryce Moose, otherwise known as the Commissioner and the only two-timer. Today I'm going to be talking about the San Diego State Classies, team managed by Jonah Giller. And part of the reason I may not be the only two-timer for very long. This team, I think, is one of the favorites now after a ton of moves. And I really love what Jonah's put together here. I really think his plan has come fully to fruition. I know he says he's a couple moves away from feeling like he's confident still, but my goodness, I really love this team. I love the depth, and I love how he's set himself up for the future as well here. So diving in today, we're going to be talking about quarterbacks first as always, but he just made a trade about an hour ago for Mr. Kyler Murray. This was a trade where it was Dak Prescott and a second-round pick from Jonah to Austin for Kyler Murray and Evan Ingram. So I guess I should start with Kyler because I think if Kyler was fully ready to go and out there, he would probably be Jonah's quarterback one. Kyler's been a guy we've seen the ceiling for him, given his rushing, all those monster performances that he put together with DeAndre Hopkins and the Cardinals over the past couple seasons. But right now he's going to be out. It sounds like it's going to be mid-season at earliest. The Cardinals have been very quiet with him, and I guess with the rest of that roster, it wouldn't really surprise me too much if he was just shut down for the entire season. I'm not really expecting too much on a fantasy side for Kyler this year, but he is a great player to own. I mean, he's clearly a very good starting quarterback, and he's going to be somebody next year, I think, who could really help Jonah out. But for this year, Deshaun Watson's going to be the guy. And look, after all of the situations kind of cleared up in Houston, and he basically took a year off from football, given the whole trading ordeal. We finally get him with his full first offseason in Cleveland. Remember last year he had to sit out all of the OTAs and training camp and everything, and like couldn't be on the sidelines for games, and he looked rusty, like he did. And last year, the Browns just didn't really piece it together with him down the stretch. They won some games, lost some games. Deshaun never really showed you that wow factor that we'd come accustomed to in Houston. And I hope people don't forget, like Deshaun Watson was a top 5 finisher for 3 consecutive years in Houston at quarterback. Like this guy was a fantasy monster. And, look, like as he comes over to the Browns, they've made some additions to that receiving core. Elijah Moore in the trade with the Jets, as well as drafting Cedric Tillman, who's also on Jonah's team, who I'll get to later. But this team is set up, I think, pretty well. I think the Browns going to be more 50-50 in terms of like passing and running than we've seen in the past. I mean, I know Nick Chubb is always going to get his, but without Kareem Hunt there, I think they're setting up a lot of short passes for Deshaun. They really want to get him in rhythm, get him comfortable, and I think they're going to be able to do it. Overall, he sits right now at quarterback 12 in Dynasty. I think it's just because of the risk involved. Like, does he ever get back to that top 5 quarterback level? I personally don't think he does, but I think he could definitely be better than quarterback 12. There's ways that this goes south, and Deshaun just never really regains it. He's never had the strongest arm, and that always scares you when you play in a cold city like Cleveland, especially down the stretch in the season. Last year, we had that game in the snow that was like 15 degrees that, they just ran Nick Chubb like 35 times, and Deshaun like barely threw the ball forward. So those are the kind of things down the stretch that scare you, especially Browns home games. Again, like they're going to play a lot of teams in the North. So any game in Pittsburgh, in Baltimore, it's a tough division. In Cincinnati, like it's a very tough division. And I just don't think that suits Deshaun's skill set very well. But with that said, like this is the kind of risk Jonah could take with Kyler. And basically even if you have to redshirt Kyler for a year, like I think it makes a lot of sense with this roster. Mac Jones and Baker are still here on his team. Anytime you need a weekly starter, you got 2 guys who are going to start for their teams. Sure, they don't have the weekly upside of being, like a top 10 fantasy finisher, but listen, they could maybe get the job done and help you get a win one week when you don't have your starting QB. So I like what Jonah's pieced together here. I think his 4 quarterback situation makes sense, at least for the time being. And yeah, I really don't think I have anything else to say about QB. I think for him, this what does he rank? 10th out of 12th in quarterbacks? 9th out of 12th, yeah. I think that's probably fair. If Deshaun never regains that, super high ceiling, I think this is perfectly fine for where everything is ranked. If he does, this will obviously move up. When Kyler's healthy, he's probably higher in quarterback 13 as well. But overall, I do like what Jonah's put together here. The real fun starts when we move down to running back, though. And, look, Jonah last year finished 4-10, and he was the worst overall team in terms of points scored, had the worst record, everything like that. Everything you need to acquire the number 1 overall pick, which would be Bijan. I sent him that monster offer, which was basically something he couldn't refuse to take Bijan, or for me to take Bijan from him. But since then, over the last couple of weeks, I think maybe 3 weeks ago, I traded Bijan back to Jonah for a bunch of picks. I went for the full reset here on my roster because I just didn't think my team was good enough to win right now. And typically with running backs that we see taken this high, the team's plan is to use them right away. Usually their best couple seasons are their first couple seasons in the NFL. I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to capitalize on that, and Bijan was actually going to help me win games when my team was just not ready to compete. I really just didn't want to waste him. So I figured selling him at his peak value made some sense for me. But for Jonah, he took the other side of that and said, well, if I have Bijan, it's time to try and win. So he's made a ton of deals over the last couple of weeks trying to improve this roster, get some win now pieces, and really shore up some of the things on his depth chart that were not looking so great. Bijan, if you've never looked at his college stats, I was going to pull it up here alive for everyone to see, but because my internet has been in and out with this rain, I don't want to potentially screw up the stream here. So I'll just talk you through it. Last year, Bijan had nearly 1,600 yards as a rusher. He had 18 rushing touchdowns, had another 400 yards receiving. I think he caught 30 balls or something in college, or as a junior in college at Texas. He is the prototypical prospect. This is what you want. This is the Saquon Barkley level, the Jamal Lewis level, LaDainian Tomlinson level. This is what you look for. It's a guy who can do it all. Prototypical size, freak athlete, comes from a big school, always had the pedigree of being a 5-star recruit. I mean, he is just that good. He's that guy. So my prediction for Bijan is he's just going to be a fantasy monster of the next 3-4 seasons. Maybe he starts to see some decline as he gets into his late 20s, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if this dude is just a top 10 running back over the next decade. It really wouldn't. He's that good. Also, has never had like a serious injury or anything. And if you've ever seen the clip of him landing on his head in college, it's very scary, but was perfectly fine. Like, I don't think he even missed a game. But I have no problem with Bijan at all. I think he's going to be a monster. Again, in redraft leagues, this dude is going typically like the 8th overall pick in redraft. Be ready for him to be a monster right out of the gate. This isn't like a wait and see player. Like, Bijan's going to be the guy. If you're worried about Cordell Patterson or Tyler Algier, I think you're just I got a lake house in Nebraska to sell you. Like, it's just fool's gold. Like, those guys are not even on the same planet as Bijan as a runner, as a prospect. The Falcons have like the best O-line in the NFL. He is going to get as many touches as he can handle, and just be ready for him to put up a potential top 5 season as a running back. Again, the last time we saw a rookie go in the top 10 picks in redraft leagues was Ezekiel Elliott. And Zeke's best ever season was when he was a rookie. He finished at RB2 that season. If you drafted Zeke, you likely won your league or got to the end. That's how Bijan is set up to do it again this year. I would expect nothing less. I think he's really going to have a top 3, top 4 finish overall at running back position this year. And I'm glad Jonah has set his team up well to take advantage of that. The next guy here, Jahmyr Gibbs. The Lions surprisingly took him very early. I believe he was top 15 pick in real life draft. He was the clear 102 in our Dynasty draft as well. Profiles way more as a pass catcher. He kind of has the same Alvin Kamara kind of style to entering the NFL that some other guys, like Bijan's totally different, right? One school was the workhorse. Jahmyr Gibbs started at Georgia Tech. He was a 3-star recruit. Transferred to Alabama after 2 years at Georgia Tech, where he was just like the one good player on a really bad football team. So 1 year at Alabama, most carries he ever saw in the season was 151. I mean, that's throughout college. And he got it at Alabama with 151 carries. But he averaged a little over 6 yards per carry, caught 45 passes. he really is a great pass catcher, just great hands, great in space. He's got that Tyreek Hill second gear to just burn people. And with where he fits in Detroit, with how Jared Goff likes to play too, I think it's kind of the dream spot for him. Getting out in space, getting the ball with like somewhere to move. It was kind of what they wanted to do with DeAndre Swift. I just think the Lions coaching staff really hated DeAndre Swift and never gave him the opportunity to be that full-time runner. Now I don't know, like Jahmyr Gibbs is a runner. Is he better than DeAndre Swift? Like, I don't know. But all I do know is like in space, Jahmyr Gibbs is special. Like he's like one of these guys that's like best in the world at like what he does really good. So I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have a good season. As far as this year goes for him, I'm not too sure what his fantasy output looks like. He's never been a big touchdown scorer, and he doesn't really profile as a red zone back. David Montgomery is there, who's probably going to steal a good bit of work from him, but he's going to play a lot in the passing game. And again, in a PPR league, Jahmyr Gibbs could be somebody who catches 5 or 6 passes a week if you gave him 12 carries too. It's kind of what Alvin Kamara's done, right? And like peak Alvin Kamara, if Jahmyr Gibbs had that career, I think you take it, right? Again, Jahmyr Gibbs is listed RB3 overall in Dynasty. I think that's perfectly fine. He's going to have a really long career and be a monster, I'm guessing. I don't have a single bad thing to say about either of these guys. Would love having both of them on my team. It's just not the right time. Pretty much as simple as that. All right, so J.K. Dobbins. We've been waiting to see what he's really capable of for a while. I know he's dealt with a million injuries. There's kind of a contract dispute this offseason. But the Ravens really trust this guy. And John Harbaugh's talking all the time about how great J.K. Dobbins is. When he was in college at Ohio State, he was a monster. And just due to injuries, we haven't really seen him get that full 17 game as the starter kind of workload. As far as the Ravens backfield goes, Gus Edwards is still there. Keaton Mitchell is somebody they drafted to come in and be like a pass down guy. But with how the Ravens play and with all of the stuff that Lamar Jackson does, J.K. Dobbins has consistently been at the top of like yards per carry stuff throughout his whole career. Really great when he's out there. And it looks like he's going to be ready to go for week 1 for, I think, the first time in 2 seasons. I'm excited about him. I'm hesitant, obviously, with the injuries and like usually this stuff when these guys get hurt so early, like really piles on and makes them have, shorter careers. But Dobbins is kind of set up here to have like a pretty good season. I definitely think he's a player for Jonah to keep holding. I just don't know if you're going to get the value you want from him if you wanted to trade him. And then kind of with how this is set up, like behind his first 2 running backs, it makes J.K. Dobbins like a weekly flex play, which I think is great. I think a lot of people would love to have him as their RB2 and you get to play him in the flex. So that's great. Antonio Gibson was on my team for, over 2 years, but traded him to Blake. And then, of course, Blake traded him right away after he got him. But Antonio Gibson is kind of set up to have a very good season when it comes to catching the football for the Commanders. He's never been a great runner of the ball. He's just been a really good athlete. Played receiver at Memphis in college and kind of transitioned to running back in the NFL. He's still kind of like learning the position and everything like that, which is always scary to hear. But for what he does really well, he is, kind of good. Like he's very good at it, right? Being a pass down or a pass catching back in a PPR league is so important. And this offseason, it sounds like they want to give him more carries and more work. And they realize they probably played Brian Robinson too much last year. There's no real threat to him, to anyone taking like the third down role from him. I think you're going to see a season where Antonio Gibson catches 55, 60 passes, gets his 700, 800 rushing yards probably. If the Commanders are worse than we think, I could see a way this kind of goes sideways. And, I guess that probably threatens Brian Robinson maybe a little bit more than Antonio Gibson. But in general, like I think both of these guys, Commanders backs are going to be just fine because I'm higher on the Commanders, I guess, in general than the public is. But I think he's going to have a good season. And look, if they trail a lot in these games, he's going to be playing a lot as a pass catching back. So, I think that's really good for him. We've seen Sam Howell already. Horrible itch. We've seen Sam Howell already in preseason throw him a touchdown. And that's just stuff that's like really encouraging to see. Not that it changes anyone's opinion on him, but like it definitely makes you feel better about the thesis behind like why Antonio Gibson is like a very good player in fantasy this year. And overall, like this top 4 running back room is scary. Like if you're a team trying to beat Jonah, every single one of these top 4 guys is like capable of having that 2 touchdown game. Antonio Gibson, maybe not quite as much, but the first 3, we'll see with Jahmyr Gibbs, but Bijan and J.K. Dobbins, of course, can do it. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be more of the pass catcher, but it wouldn't shock me with how much the Lions are scoring if he has a couple of monster weeks himself. And then Antonio Gibson should be consistent, get you 10 to 15 every week. Behind Antonio Gibson is where our first kind of question marks come, and all 4. Let me see if I scroll down a little bit here. Yeah, okay. So the 4 guys behind Antonio Gibson are all really young players with potential opportunity who are clearly not the starter, but if the starter gets hurt, it's the handcuff. Really smart how this has been put together. This is basically what I tried to do last year. That's kind of how Jalen Warren ended up on my team of, I was just looking for Najee's backup, and all of a sudden it's just like Jalen Warren's way better than anyone realized. This could easily happen again here with what Jonah's got. So like Zamir White, who was hurt all of last year, tore his ACL in the national championship, his last game at Georgia. So the Raiders took him along slowly, and then obviously with Josh Jacobs and them being in the playoff hunt, they can't like work Zamir White in. You don't want to, kind of ruin what has got you so far. So finally we get Zamir White with a full offseason ahead of him, and he's going to be Josh Jacobs' direct backup this year. It's his job. He won the job. And he is another one of these just freak athlete runners. I mean, I know Georgia has a million of these guys, but this is what Zamir White is. He is definitely capable of handling the workload. Like if Josh Jacobs gets hurt, they can give Zamir White the ball 15 times a game and feel good about him. He's never been like a pass catcher. So maybe he can do it, maybe he can't, but that's like a wait and see. But he's somebody whose value's gone up a lot in Dynasty just because we didn't really see him do much last year, but the Raiders clearly like him enough to give him this opportunity. So that's definitely encouraging if you're Jonah. I don't know how many weeks you're going to get out of Zamir White without a Josh Jacobs injury, but my goodness, that's a great player to have, especially if you're trying to beat Zach's team and Zach is too stubborn to try and trade for his direct backup for Jacobs. That could be like a 2-for-1. You just get so much leverage there. I love that. Zach Evans, who was just acquired from Xander, and I know we talked about Zach Evans yesterday on my show with Jacob, but I was really down on him as a prospect as the process was going on. A lot of people had him as like overall RB3 in that class. I never saw it. He was a very high recruit, was a baller at TCU, but as soon as he got to Ole Miss, it's like he forgot how to play. He gets an opportunity here with the Rams, though. The Rams has a very thin backfield, and Cam Akers has never been somebody who's like, oh, this is my job. There's no way they could get him off the field. I think Zach Evans is going to get a chance to play this year. And again, down the stretch, like if the Rams suck, like it's a very good shot like Zach Evans is going to start working in here for maybe some meaningful snaps. I'm excited about him, I think, long-term, because I think he definitely has the potential. Again, he's just another one of these guys this year where it's a total wait and see, but I do like Zach Evans. Isaiah Spiller, look, like this Chargers backfield behind Eckler it's been a question for 2 years now of like, how do we figure this thing out? Because like Eckler has never been a consistent, carrier of the football. We know he's like the best pass catching back in the NFL. Like that's no question, but, for the goal line stuff, for the short down and distance, for the even just 2nd and 7 and you need 4 yards, they've been looking for this guy. And Isaiah Spiller last year was the youngest player in that draft class. I don't think he even played as a rookie at all, but he's going to come in this year, and it's him and Josh Kelly kind of battling for this 2nd, 3rd spot. I think whoever is the better of them early in the season is just going to take that job. So if Isaiah Spiller gets that job, it's going to be valuable. It really is. And, the other side of this is like if Eckler gets hurt, that Chargers backfield is going to be really interesting. It's something that we're talking about a lot as the season goes along. So I give Isaiah Spiller a shot here. I don't know how valuable he is for this year again. I could see a potential where he is kind of a zero, and I could see the potential where he's like a flex option, like all the way up to a flex option, which could be very good for Jonah. Biggest thing here is like, unless he gets hurt, we know who he's playing at running back, and these guys are all like really good stashes behind him, which is exactly what you want. Jordan Mason being the last guy. Jordan Mason did make the 49ers 53. We talked yesterday about Elijah Mitchell and kind of his role if anything happened to McCaffrey, but Jordan Mason's just in that same role. If anything happens to McCaffrey, he's going to be there. He's going to get carries. So definitely just a great player to hold on to. All right, as we go to wide receivers here. The big theme here is Jonah has like a ton of really good receivers again. And we talked about this yesterday with Xander a little bit, except all of these guys are like better and more valuable than what Xander has. It's just funny. Christian Kirk, I think, is way too low in the overall rankings. He's better than wide receiver 34 in Dynasty. Like he's got this year plus 2 more years under contract with Jacksonville. I mean, that's a lot of time playing with Trevor Lawrence as like a locked in starter. He's better than wide receiver 34. He was a guy who was top 10 in the, wide receiver PPR rankings last year, like all the way up until the final like 2 weeks. Show what he could do. Calvin really isn't like a threat to his potential workload. Like, sure, he could take some targets, but they play different positions pretty much. I mean, Christian Kirk is a slot guy who kind of had to like moonlight as a number one receiver. Calvin Ridley's going to take that over, and Christian Kirk's going to be working against a lot of linebackers and safeties this year. Ton of just underneath simple catches. He's going to be a PPR monster. No problems there at all. The next guy is somebody who I don't feel great about. Part of the reason I traded him last year, and I didn't think the Cardinals would blow it up to this extent, but when Kyler's injury happened, Hollywood Brown was somebody who I was kind of worried about, because being a smaller receiver and playing in an offense where you're like kind of forced to be that number one guy is scary. Like, I would love to see Hollywood Brown play with so if you swapped like T. Higgins and Hollywood Brown and you put him on the Bengals, like I think he could be a monster, just because he can play so much like one-on-one coverage, so much against like safeties and stuff. But when he's asked to be the number one receiver, it's really hard for him. In the camp, he's looked really disgruntled with all of the problems with the Cardinals. New coaching staff and everything. They have no loyalty to Hollywood Brown at this point. That's why you see him down here, wide receiver 37. There was a time I think he was like top 20 in value, but it's quickly come down here. Might even still be too high for my liking, to be quite honest with you. Again, like his only competition is really Michael Wilson and Trey McBride. But the problem is like he's getting thrown the ball by Josh Dobbs and Clayton Tune this year. And it's just another year of his career kind of in the middle of his prime where it could be kind of wasted. Like, sure, like he's going to have like usable weeks as a flex. I just don't think he's going to be very consistent. I would expect him to be somebody Jonah has already been looking to kind of move around. Would not be shocked at all if I see his name pop up in a trade here in the next week or so. Like this Cardinals team is going to be so bad that I think it's really just going to affect him and his potential output. Like, even if you take touchdowns out of it, like, can Josh Dobbs get a 5'8" Hollywood Brown the ball? I mean, he hasn't been I don't know. Like, Clayton Tune was a 5th round pick for a reason. And then Josh Dobbs was just traded for, who has like never been a good quarterback in the NFL. So I'm just worried about the Cardinals. I think their whole plan is just to go 0-17, right? Like, one injury for these guys on a team like the Cardinals, you're just going to get shut down for the year. Like, that's how this happens. Keenan Allen, next up. I pulled up Keenan Allen's stats because I wanted to look at this. So 5 of the last 6 seasons, Keenan Allen has cleared 1,000 yards. Last year, he did miss some games, so he only had a little less than 800. But again, playing with this Chargers offense, as long as Justin Herbert is healthy, Keenan Allen's probably going to be doing well. As he gets older, though, they draft Quentin Johnston, and there's kind of threats to Keenan Allen's productivity, I think, for the first time in a few years. But we know how good he is. He's still one of the best route runners in the NFL, still great on the short yardage stuff. He's never been a big touchdown guy. He doesn't profile as that either, but he's going to get just kind of the perfect player to have if you're trying to win games. Should be a lot of consistent games out of Keenan Allen, and I think he'll be somebody who Jonah's really happy to have. He's like the perfect third receiver. I just think Jonah maybe needs a different second one here. All right, so Rashad Bateman. I've joked with Jonah and Jacob over the years that I feel like this guy's like just a myth. I saw him make one 80-yard touchdown catch against the Dolphins and just disappear in the thin air with an injury. I never hear any buzz around him. I never hear any hype around him. You know, they draft Zay Flowers in the first round. I don't think the Ravens are counting on him to be much of anything. But, you know, he's a first-round pick who kind of sets himself up again for, like, if he's healthy and out there, like, sure, this could be the year we see the 1,000-yard Rashad Bateman. Like, absolutely. Like, they signed Odell Beckham, who we'll see how much he has left in the tank, but I think Bateman's better than him. Zay Flowers is going to be the slot underneath guy, play that Keenan Allen role for the Ravens, and doesn't really threaten what Bateman does. You know, I really don't have much to say about this dude because I've barely seen him play. I know he was a monster at Minnesota in college, but like outside of that, like I just have no idea like where to value Rashad Bateman, what to do with him. Wide receiver 45 feels right for a guy who was a first round pick a couple of years ago and has shown flashes, but like when you never see him play, it's tough, man. It really is. DeAndre Hopkins next up. And, you know, look, when we were going through Xander's sheet with that trade happened live, he was the number 2 on Xander's team. I feel a lot better with him as being a wide receiver 4 or 5 here for Jonah. Look, with the Titans, like I know Treylon Burks has been practicing, and it sounds like he's going to be back on the field very soon here, probably by week 1. But DeAndre Hopkins has not really shown signs of like slowing down. Like, yes, his yards per catch has come down over the years because he's playing more close to the line of scrimmage, like the big slot role. But he's always been a 10 touchdown every season kind of guy. He's clearing 1,000 yards whenever he's healthy, no problem. I'd expect him to do it again here, really, with the Titans. I mean, like, yeah, Derrick Henry's going to get the ball a ton, but they're going to have to throw it, and it's so concentrated with where they throw the ball. They only have 3 players who are like worthy of receiving a target. You know, Hopkins, Burks, and Chiggs. So I think Hopkins is going to have a good year. I don't know how good the Titans are going to be as a team. It seems like every single year they're in the wild card contention and somehow get in the playoffs. So if that happens again this year, you should get 17 full games out of Hopkins, barring injury. Should be another great season for him. I think this probably is maybe the last year we should expect like a good fantasy season out of DeAndre Hopkins. But again, the perfect guy to own if you're trying to win games right now. And I should stop here and I should say the reason that these guys, these older guys on Jonah's team don't scare me as much is because Jonah still has picks. He's got 2 second rounders in, let me just show you. So he has 2 second rounders in 2024, and then he has 4 first rounders in 2025, as well as 2 seconds in 2025. So if Keenan Allen snap retires into the season and Jonah gets 0 for him, like, yeah, it's kind of going to suck, but like he can replace him pretty easily, right? Like even if you traded Keenan Allen today, no one's giving you more than like a second round pick for him. So he can just easily replace these guys. Like that's no problem at all. So when you have these older guys on your team, it makes sense as long as you have some picks and some ways to recoup that value. After him, Jaden Reed. This is a guy who, like, I was kind of late to the party of. I didn't know too much about him. I didn't really watch him too much in college. But I saw some really interesting stuff from the fantasy community on Twitter of, like, Jaden Reed really could be a guy. Now, he's drafted to be the kind of number 3 or potentially number 2 if he overtakes Romeo Doubs for the Packers. But I want to pull up – I'm going to do this real quick. Screen share. I'm going to pull up Jaden Reed on Player Profiler here because I want you guys to see this. Now, look, he's a 23-year-old rookie, 5'11", 190, kind of a smaller guy, short arms, like whatever, right? His Player Profiler comparison based on height, weight, speed, and then as a prospect, like AG came out and everything, is Stephon Diggs, which is like, it's like a whoa, like when you see that. You know, look, like how this Packers offense runs, like we're going to see. But Jaden Reed could definitely be somebody down the stretch who, like, it's really easy to get excited about. I've seen some people flag plant him on Dynasty shows that I watch that, like, he could be the next the next Stephon Diggs, right? That later round pick. I believe he was a second or third round pick this year in real life, but it's like a guy who wasn't a first round pick who's just a monster, just kind of right out of the gate. And it kind of makes sense, right? Like Romeo Dobbs is not anything special. Christian Watson has a lot of problems for the amount of talent he has. He's definitely not like a perfect player, but Jaden Reed's going to get opportunity here. And that depth chart is wide open. Like if he just proves he's the second or best receiver on this team, I mean, it could be his job pretty quickly. But just wanted to highlight this one real quick. Okay, let me go back to Jonah's team here. Team breakdown. Here we go. Okay. All right, so after Jaden Reed is Courtland Sutton, and Courtland Sutton has scored 4 touchdowns since 2018. That's about what I have for you. After the catastrophic injury, he has scored 4 touchdowns since, or 2019. 4 touchdowns since 2019, sorry. He had 900 yards last year, stayed relatively healthy. But, look, like, as much as I want to be out on Courtland Sutton, the situation presented makes me think he could really have a nice season. Jerry Jeudy is going to be out for another month and a half, it sounds like. Marvin Mims is a rookie and isn't like, I mean, he's so tiny compared to Courtland Sutton. It's almost like they're totally different players, right? Like Marvin Mims' success doesn't really affect Courtland Sutton, even if you think Mims is good. But for all these injuries the Broncos receivers have had, it's really nice that Courtland Sutton has stayed healthy throughout all of this, and he's going to be the starter day one for the Broncos. And look, say what you will about Russ, say what you will about Sean Payton, but I think Courtland Sutton's going to have an opportunity here for probably his second best fantasy season ever. Jerry Jeudy can't get on the field because he's so healthy, and it seems like all of these leg injuries have really added up for him. I don't think Jerry Jeudy is going to have the same burst that we saw at Alabama anymore. I really think he might have just already lost it with all these injuries piling up. And look, Courtland Sutton is, I think he's a little older than people realize. He's 28 now, but I think he's actually kind of set up here for a really decent season. Perfect guy to have on your bench too. He's like Jonah doesn't have to start him every single week. Look, you could play Christian Kirk, DeAndre Hopkins, and Keenan Allen feel really good. And then you have the option of Courtland Sutton, Hollywood Brown, and Jaden Reed behind him. That sounds really good to me. Really like what he's put together here. And Courtland Sutton is a guy for any contender who's like a really perfect, like potential flex play. And I really like that. I really like what he's done here. After Courtland Sutton is 2 guys who the fantasy and like Devy community really love as prospects. And like Cedric Tillman was, for a time they were considered to be a first-round pick receiver at Tennessee. He was the best receiver at Tennessee 2 years ago. Jalen Hyatt was a nobody. Last year, the kind of gimmick scheme with Hendon Hooker takes over. Cedric Tillman, I think, had some injuries and isn't the deep ball threat of Jalen Hyatt, but he is just a good receiver. Now, Jalen Hyatt has the blow-up season, gets all of the hype, all the praise and everything, and it's like people forgot how good Cedric Tillman still is. Remember, he still went in the 3rd round this year. The Browns like him, and that wide receiver depth chart, I wouldn't say is the most open in the NFL. I mean, there's 3 good players in front of him, but with Amari Cooper heading towards the end of his contract, and DPJ, I believe, is a free agent next offseason, like Cedric Tillman could be worth a lot more next year. Definitely somebody to keep your eye on. I don't think he's going to matter too much in fantasy this year, but I think next offseason, Cedric Tillman could be somebody who really gets steamed up and could be a pretty popular redraft pick. Michael Wilson. Look, I'm not a fan of Michael Wilson as a prospect. I mean, he is like the most whatever looking receiver you've ever seen. I cannot knock the situation. Michael Wilson is going to be the number 2 receiver on the Cardinals. He's going to be the locked-in starter. He was a 3rd-round pick. Dealt with a ton of injuries at Stanford in college. Was never like a big producer or anything like that. He is just he's just a body. Like we kind of saw with Alec Pierce last year, who wasn't very good. The Colts kind of reached for him in that draft. Ended up playing a ton. Never really did anything with it. I could see the same thing happen for Michael Wilson, although I've seen a lot of people say that this dude's like legitimately very good. And if that's true, I've had a lot of opportunity to trade for Michael Wilson this summer, and I just haven't made that decision with Jonah to do it. But just keep your eye on him. I don't know if he ends up playing for Jonah this year. I don't know if he's a trade piece, but like, if you guys are watching this and like looking at Jonah's team, I mean, he's got 3 really good rookie receivers, and then he's got Rashad Bateman. If you're one of these teams that has an aging receiving core, you want more youth, go trade for Jaden Reed. Go trade for Cedric Tillman. Like, just get these guys on your bench. If you don't have to play them and you got an extra pick to throw around, like, send Jonah something for this. He doesn't need all of these guys, and I don't think he wants to have all of them. I think he's like holding this, hoping somebody like Zach would come say, hey, let me get like a young receiver because I have 0. Like, Grant, go get a young receiver. You have 0. Perfect kind of guys. And then Hunter Renfrow, look, I don't have anything to say about Hunter Renfrow. I really don't. He's going to be in the slot. Darren Waller leaves. He's been hurt the last couple of seasons, was a really old prospect. I don't think you ever see that 1,000-yard season repeated, but who knows, right? He's just kind of lurking on Jonah's bench in case something happens. Hunter Renfrow becomes playable. Can't blame him. He gets his Clemson Tiger there. Keyshawn Boutte, at one time was thought to be the number 1 overall receiver in this class for receivers. As a 5-star recruit, had a 300-yard receiving game as a true freshman at LSU. Ever since then, it's kind of all been downhill for him. A lot of red flags in his profile. Goes to a bad situation with the Patriots. He's a taxi stash, but he is a big name, right? People know his name and maybe want to potentially trade for him down the line. Wouldn't be surprised if Jonah gets some offers for him as well. Again, just another rookie receiver. Jonah's just stashing these guys. It's the way you do it, because if any of these guys pop, like, it's just another huge piece of value that you have. You guys got to stop letting Jonah get all these guys. You really got to stop doing it. Next guy here, Sam Laporta. Actually, before I talk about Laporta, I'm going to talk about the other guys, because Jonah has this kind of wacky 7 tight end situation here. Just traded for Evan Ingram, who I think he can start week to week and feel good about it. Juwan Johnson, another guy who's going to have the biggest opportunity of his career playing with the Saints. Evan Ingram had a great season last year, kind of out of nowhere, but they add Calvin Ridley. Like, I don't know how much of if that is repeatable, or if Evan Ingram was just kind of luck boxed into a really, really good game. Didn't he have like a 40-point fantasy week? Kind of skewed his stats from last year. I think he did, but overall, like, Evan Ingram's going to be a weekly starter, I think, in fantasy at tight end. Jonah's obviously hoping Laporta becomes that guy, but you just never know. Juwan Johnson is going to have, I think, a pretty good season. It sounds like him and Derek Carr are like best friends. I don't know if you guys have seen that stuff from Saints camp. It sounds like him and Derek Carr are like best friends. He threw him 2 touchdowns in the preseason already. Juwan Johnson's a great athlete, and if this works out, like, he could be one of these steals, I think, because he's kind of a throw-in in a trade that could end up being pretty nice. Gerald Everett, man, sure would be nice to have Gerald Everett as my tight end 5. He can be the starter for the Chargers. Like, I don't know how consistent it's going to be week to week, but if you're ever in a pinch, I mean, what a great player to have to play. Dawson Knox, he's going to be more the inline tight end. Kincaid's going to be split out. I think they're going to run a lot of like 2 tight end, 2 receiver sets. Kincaid will play in the slot. Dawson Knox inline. We saw him have a big season, but when you draft a tight end in the first round, it's usually the writing on the wall for like how they feel about Dawson Knox overall. Hunter Henry, whatever. And then Cole Turner, who could end up being the Commanders' starting tight end by probably pretty early in the season. Cole Turner was a 5th-round pick out of Nevada last year. We didn't really see much of him last year, but I think he could end up being a little something. Sounds like he's been doing well in camp. Sam Howell likes throwing to him. Just keep your eye on that. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta was a early 2nd-round pick at tight end. He was actually the 2nd tight end off the board in front of Michael Mayer, which was surprising to pretty much everybody. And then, you see a tight end from Iowa and you think, oh, this guy's just another big blocker. I'm going to pull up his player profiler real quick so you guys can see. Sam Laporta is a freak. Okay. 91st percentile 40-yard dash, 86th percentile speed score. He's 76th in burst, 90 in agility, and then 80th in catch radius. All at 6'3", 245. He profiles as a receiver, not really a blocker. He is going to start from the lines from day one. And my goodness, again, with this offense, Jahmyr Gibbs, Laporta, we'll see about Jamo, but they have so many exciting pieces that can kind of do a lot of different things. Laporta is somebody I'm really excited about in general. I think all these tight, like I know it's hard to imagine a world where all of these tight ends pan out, but Laporta, Mayer, Musgrave, Kincaid, even like Schoonmaker and Brenton Strange could be something. This could be one of the better tight end classes we've seen in a long time. So I just want you guys to keep these guys in mind. I know it says up there his player profiler is Dalton Keene. I literally don't even know who that is. But Laporta's going to have a chance here. He's not the tallest guy. He's only 6'3", but just keep your eye on him. I think he's got the potential to be one of these Dallas Goedert types as his career goes on. So, just keep that in mind. All right, I'm going to stop this one and then go back to it one more time just to show you guys the picks and then talk kind of overall here. So, all right, go back to team breakdown. All right, so what Jonah has done here is he's kind of set himself up to compete this year. And it's very clear. I think he wants to make a couple more moves just to kind of shore this thing up. The reason I have him second in my most likely to win the championship power rankings and why he's second overall in the keep trade cut team value is because when you look at these picks, right? For 2025 first with a roster that's like ready to win right now is like a really scary thing for the league. It's kind of what Jordan has too. But Jordan has just not been aggressive at all and like trying to like make moves to improve his team. He just kind of kicks the can, whatever. Jonas has been really active trying to get deals done to improve his roster, continuing to add these first rounders, continuing to add second rounders, and he's done a great job of it. Again, we've got, I believe, 8 firsts and seconds over the next 2 seasons. Is that right? Yeah. Oh my goodness. I don't think he's going to plan to keep all those guys, and he's already got a young team in a lot of areas. He doesn't need all those picks, so I think he's probably trying to figure out what to do with some of those picks. In general, like if it doesn't work out this year, like Jonah's not going to be upset, I don't think. But if you see him sell like a couple 2025 firsts to go get a Tyreek Hill or go get, look, if you're Austin and Jonah comes to you and says, hey, I'll give you 4 2025 firsts and Rashad Bateman for Justin Jefferson, like, do you say no? It'd be hard to say no. Could he go to Will and get a Jamar Chase offer out there? Could he go get, he's already got Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs, so he's just looking for top-end receiver talent probably, but he can package so many of these picks together and set himself up for years to come. He mentioned he wants to compete in 2 different timelines, so I think he's going to go for it this year and next. Maybe make some trades, get a ton of picks going forward, and maybe 2026 or something. But I think Jonah's got the right idea for like how you properly build a roster. And I think if you guys scroll through here and scroll through some of the trades he's done, you can kind of see it, how he's done it. It's not that complicated. He's just getting people to agree to stuff that like makes his team better and their team kind of goes sideways. I think it's impressive, and I think Jonah's done a great job. So I'm going to say props to him. I'm going to say my prediction for Jonah this year, I'll say 9-5. I think he's like the 3 seed, maybe 4 seed in grit playoffs. I could see him getting a bye week too. Like again, like if he wants to sell some of these picks and go get a receiver, like he could easily have like a close to unbeatable roster because if Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs are as good as advertised, it's just going to be tough, I think. I'm higher on this team, I think, than most people are. And I look at a lot of these teams that have just been stagnant and not willing to kind of upgrade positions, and it starts to get really scary because if everyone else is improving and you're going nowhere, that's how you miss the playoffs. And I think you guys know who I'm talking about. So with that said, thank you guys so much. The next time I'm back, we will be doing a team review for, I think, either my team or Jacob's team. We're going to try to have some fun with it. Try not to provide too many homer takes. But it should be a fun show to do, and I'm really looking forward to doing it. I got to defend some bags here. I can't have. I got to make Jameson Williams sound like the best player ever again. And I know there's been some dirt thrown in his name, but my goodness, I can't wait to defend him. But again, I want to say thanks, guys, for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, leave a comment, tell me your thoughts. And other than that, is there anything with the state classes that I missed? If there is, or somebody you wanted me to touch on that I didn't, just let me know. But overall, I really like Jonah's team. I really like his direction. I think he's just set this thing up so well. So thanks, guys.